The air on Halloween night in Oak Ridge Heights was a living thing, buzzing with the happy hum of laughter and the playful dance of jack-o'-lanterns flickering on every porch. For Maya Laurent, it was all a little overwhelming. She was the new art teacher in town, and the ink on her new lease was barely dry. Starting over, that was the goal. Starting over after a breakup that had felt less like a heartbreak and more like a demolition of her entire world. She clutched her plastic cup, the witch hat on her head, feeling more like a shield than a costume. The neighborhood party was a kaleidoscope of friendly faces, but she felt like a ghost haunting the edges. Just a few more minutes, she promised herself, then she could slip away, back to the quiet solitude of her new, empty apartment. Taking a step back, hoping to blend into the shadows of a large oak tree, she felt a sudden, unyielding impact. A solid wall of a person. A yelp escaped her lips as something cold and wet splashed across her simple black dress. A gasp, a muttered curse, and then the rich, unmistakable scent of red wine filled the air. "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry," she stammered, frantically dabbing at the dark stain blooming across her chest. It was spreading, a crimson catastrophe on her only party outfit. She looked up, ready to offer 1,000 more apologies, but the words died in her throat. Time didn't just stop, it fractured. Standing before her was a man who looked like he'd been sculpted from midnight and moonlight. Elias Rowan, her neighbor from 2 doors down, the one she'd only seen in fleeting glimpses carrying groceries, walking his dog each time leaving her a little breathless. But up close, he was devastating. His smile was slow, deliberate, a wicked curve of his lips that felt like sin wrapped in the finest silk. And his eyes, they were a deep forest green, but behind them, a shadow swirled, something ancient and far too heavy for an ordinary man. He held up the now empty wine glass with a theatrical sigh. "Well," he said, his voice a low, rumbling baritone that vibrated right through her. "I suppose that's one way to make an introduction." He wasn't looking at the stain on his own crisp white shirt. He was looking only at her, his gaze so intense it felt like a physical touch. Their eyes locked, and the world narrowed to the space between them. The party noise faded into a distant hum. Her heart, which had been beating a nervous rhythm against her ribs, began to pound a frantic, primal drum. And in that electric, suspended moment, something deep within her, something she never knew existed, stirred. A flicker of forgotten instinct, a whisper of wildness beneath her skin, answering a call she didn't understand. And before we go any further, can I just say something from the bottom of my heart? This little channel, our Gracie Werewolf Story Bank, just hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm honestly blown away. This isn't just my channel anymore. It's our pack. You watching right now, you made this community real. You're the reason these stories have a home. So, if you're part of this story, part of this moment, I want to know where you are. Drop your country in the comments below. Let me see where our amazing pack is watching from all over the world. And if you're enjoying these tales and want to help our pack grow even stronger, you can buy me a coffee using the link in the description. Every little bit helps me create more stories for you. Now, let's get back to Elias and Maya, because something tells me this collision is about to spark a fire. Elias finally broke the silence, his smirk softening into something genuinely amused. "Don't worry about the dress," he said, his eyes tracing the path of the spilled wine. "Red is your color." Maya felt a blush creep up her neck, a warmth that had nothing to do with embarrassment. "And white isn't yours anymore apparently," she quipped, surprised by her own boldness. A small laugh escaped him, a rich, genuine sound that was even more captivating than his smile. "Elias Rowan," he said, extending a hand that wasn't holding the glass. His grip was firm, his skin warm. The simple touch sent another jolt through her, a current of pure energy. "Maya Laurent," she replied, her voice a little steadier now. "I just moved in down the street." "I know," he said, and the way he said it sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't creepy, it was knowing, as if he'd been aware of her long before this moment. "The art teacher, welcome to Oak Ridge Heights." "We're mostly harmless." The corner of his mouth twitched, hinting at the lie in that statement. The air around them still felt charged, thick with unspoken questions. Why did looking at him feel like coming home to a place she'd never been? Why did his presence awaken this strange, restless energy inside her? The shadow in his eyes was still there, a hint of a storm behind a calm facade. He was more than just a handsome neighbor. She could feel it in her bones. He was a secret, wrapped in a mystery, and she had just stumbled right into the middle of it. The spilled wine felt less like an accident and more like fate, staining them both, marking them in a way she couldn't yet comprehend. This Halloween night, it seemed, held more tricks and treats than she could have ever imagined. The strobe lights of the party melt into a dizzying swirl of color, and for a second, the whole world tilts on its axis. Just as I start to stumble, a strong hand grips my arm, steadying me. It's Elias. His touch is firm, grounding, but it sends a jolt through me, a strange mix of alarm and intrigue. I can feel the warmth of his palm through the thin fabric of my sleeve, and my skin prickles. "Whoa there, easy does it," he says, his voice a low murmur close to my ear. I look up, and he's smiling, but it doesn't quite reach his eyes. His hand is still on my arm, his thumb stroking the inside of my wrist. It's a casual gesture, maybe, but it feels incredibly deliberate, and my heart starts hammering against my ribs. A little too much fun, or just mesmerized by my charming presence, he teases. I manage a weak laugh, trying to pull my arm away subtly, but his grip tightens just a fraction before he lets go. "I think the room just decided to spin on its own," I reply, my voice breathier than I intended. There's a flicker in them, something sharp and calculating that makes the hair on my arms stand up. It's the look of a predator sizing up its prey, and for a wild moment, I feel like I'm the only other person in this crowded room. Just then, the music shifts. The frantic beat of the dance track fades into something slower, more hypnotic. A beam of moonlight slices through a gap in the curtains, cutting across the dance floor and illuminating his face. And that's when I see it. His pupils, already large in the dim light, expand until they swallow the gold almost completely, turning his eyes into dark, endless pools. It's unnatural, unnerving. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but it's enough to make a chill trace its way down my spine. He blinks hard, as if shaking himself out of a trance. The intensity in his eyes vanishes, replaced by a sudden, almost flustered look. Excuse me," he mutters, his voice strained. He turns and disappears into the throng of people before I can even form a question. I'm left standing alone, the spot on my arm where he held me still tingling. A cold draft seems to snake through the warm, stuffy air, and I shiver, wrapping my arms around myself. It feels like something unseen, something ancient and cold, just passed right between us. Who or what is he? I have to know. Thanks so much for watching. If you're as hooked as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The city lights blurred into a watercolor painting through my rain-streaked window. I had finally managed to push the chaos of the day into a small, manageable box in the back of my mind. The move, the new apartment, the lost phone. It was all just background noise to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic patter of rain against the glass. I was wrapped in my favorite oversized sweater, nursing a cup of chamomile tea, trying to convince myself that this was cozy, not lonely. Just as a fragile peace began to settle over me, a deafening crack of thunder split the sky. The teacup rattled in my hands, and my heart leaped into my throat. The storm, which had been a gentle lullaby, now felt like a predator circling the building. Another boom, closer this time, and the lights flickered, casting the room in a strobe of shadows before plunging me into near total darkness, save for the faint, distant glow of the city skyline. My breath hitched. Great, just what I needed. I fumbled for the candles I knew I'd packed somewhere, my fingers grazing over half-unpacked boxes. Just as I located a small book of matches, another sound cut through the storm's fury. A sound that didn't belong. A firm, deliberate knock at my door. Thump, thump, thump. Every horror movie I'd ever seen played out in my head. Who would be out in this weather? At this hour? My apartment was at the end of a long, quiet hallway. No one ever just stopped by. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the storm's bass line. I crept towards the door, my bare feet silent on the cool floorboards. I strained to look through the peephole, but the hallway was dim, and the distorted fisheye lens showed nothing but a broad, shadowy figure. Who is it? I called out, my voice barely a whisper, easily swallowed by the wind howling outside. A voice rumbled from the other side, deep and steady, yet it seemed to carry effortlessly through the thick wood of the door. It's Elias, your neighbor, from across the hall. Elias. The name registered, but the face was a blur. I'd seen him maybe once, a fleeting glimpse of a tall figure disappearing into the apartment opposite mine. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the lock. My brain screamed at me not to open the door. It was late, I was alone, and this was a stranger. But something in his voice, a calm reassurance, made my hand turn the deadbolt. I opened the door just a crack, the security chain still fastened, and there he was. My breath caught. The shadowy figure from the peephole resolved into a man who seemed to have been carved from the very storm raging outside. Rain dripped from the ends of his dark, unruly hair, tracing paths down his temples and along a jawline that could cut glass. He wasn't just tall. He had a presence that filled the entire doorway, a solid, unshakable strength. And in his outstretched hand, gleaming under the dim hallway light, was my phone. My phone. I had been so sure it was gone forever, swallowed by the city. Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees weak. Oh, my God, I breathed, fumbling with the chain. You found it. I swung the door open. He stood there, droplets of water clinging to his black jacket, his shoulders impossibly broad. But as the gap between us closed, it wasn't just the sight of him that overwhelmed me. It was the scent. It hit me like a physical force, an invisible wave that bypassed all my defenses and went straight to my core. It was intoxicating, earthy, wild, like a forest after a downpour, the rich scent of damp soil, pine needles, and something else, something primal and warm. It was the scent of cedarwood and storm of raw, untamed nature. It was the most captivating thing I had ever smelled. He stepped inside, and the small entryway seemed to shrink around him. The air crackled, suddenly thick with an energy that had nothing to do with the lightning outside. His voice, when he spoke again, was low, a magnetic rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. I saw it on the sidewalk near the park entrance. Figured it must be yours. He handed me the phone, his fingers brushing against mine. A jolt, like a static shock but 1,000 times more potent, shot up my arm. I pulled my hand back as if burned, my skin tingling where he'd touched me. I stared up at him, and my carefully constructed walls of city girl cynicism began to crumble. His eyes, a shade of deep, forest green I could get lost in, held mine. There was something in his gaze, something ancient and fiercely protective that made me feel, for the first time in this new overwhelming city, completely safe. Yet, there was a flip side to that safety, a danger. It was in how close he stood, the heat radiating from his body, the way the air between us felt charged, humming with unspoken things. Every instinct I had was on high alert, but not in a way that made me want to run. It made me want to lean closer, to breathe in more of that incredible scent, to figure out the mystery that was Elias. He looked around my dark, half-unpacked apartment, his gaze lingering on the single flickering candle I'd managed to light. "Power's out on the whole block," he said, his voice a low murmur. He wasn't just making small talk. He was observing, assessing. He looked back at me, his eyes softening almost imperceptibly. "Are you all right here by yourself?" The question hung in the air between us, simple on the surface, but loaded with a deeper meaning I couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't just a neighborly inquiry. It felt like a promise. He was a paradox, this man, a storm and a shelter, all at once. And in the heart of the raging tempest, both outside my window and inside my chest, I felt a seismic shift. My quiet, predictable life had just collided with a force of nature. And I knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and exhilarating, that nothing would ever be the same again. So if this moment, with the thunder and the rain and that intoxicating scent, makes your heart race a little faster, if you're leaning closer to your screen wondering what happens next, please don't just be a silent watcher. Become a part of the story. The next morning, the world felt different. I woke up with the ghost of his touch still lingering on my skin, the echo of his low voice in my ears. Elias. Just thinking his name sent a shiver down my spine, a strange mix of fear and an undeniable pull. I tried to shake it off, blaming it on the late hour and the unsettling quiet of the woods. But as I went through my morning routine, making coffee, staring out the window, I couldn't get him out of my head. Who was he? Why did he appear like that? A phantom in the moonlight. My apartment, usually my sanctuary, suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. I needed air. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, hoping a brisk walk would clear my head. But it seemed the universe had other plans. As I rounded the corner onto Main Street, I saw him. He was standing across the road, partially obscured by the old oak tree near the bookstore, just watching. He wasn't doing anything menacing, just standing there, perfectly still. too still. When our eyes met, he gave a slow, deliberate nod, then turned and walked away, his movements unnervingly fluid, almost to perfect. It was unsettling, but I tried to dismiss it as a coincidence. This was a small town after all. People run into each other. But then it happened again. I was at the grocery store, picking out avocados, and when I looked up, he was at the end of the aisle, examining a carton of milk with an intensity that seemed odd. He didn't look at me that time, but I felt his presence like a change in the air pressure. A few hours later, I was jogging on my usual trail by the creek, and there he was, sitting on a bench, skipping a stone across the water with impossible precision. 4, 5, 6 skips before it vanished. He always seemed to be there, on the periphery of my life, a silent observer, always too calm to precise. It was like he was a predator, and I was, what, his prey? The thought was terrifying, yet a tiny, rebellious part of me was intrigued. The strangeness wasn't just about him either. The world around him seemed to react to his presence. Old Mrs. Gable's pack of yappy little terriers, who barked at every falling leaf, would go into a frenzy whenever he walked past her house. Not just barking, but a desperate, panic sound I'd never heard from them before. They'd press themselves against the fence, whining and growling as if facing down a wolf. But the moment he was out of sight, they'd fall silent. It happened every time. Other dogs too. The friendly golden retriever that usually begged for pets outside the coffee shop would tuck its tail and whimper if Elias was anywhere nearby. It was as if their primal instincts were screaming a warning that my human senses couldn't pick up. The breaking point came a few days later. I woke up before my alarm, the sky still a deep, pre-dawn indigo. A strange feeling of being watched pulled me from my bed to the window that overlooked the small patch of woods behind my apartment building. And there he was. He was standing in the clearing, shirtless despite the biting cold. My breath caught in my throat. His back was a roadmap of scars, old and new, pale lines that crisscrossed his skin like ancient symbols. They weren't from any fight I could imagine. They were too deliberate, too symmetrical. And the most impossible thing, as the cold morning air hit his skin, a faint steam was rising from his body, like he was burning up from the inside. It wasn't just the normal vapor of breath in the cold. It was his entire torso, radiating a heat that was visibly interacting with the frost-laced air. It was unnatural. It was impossible. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I couldn't take the not knowing anymore. I threw on my clothes and ran downstairs, my mind racing. I found him just as he was turning to leave the clearing, pulling on a simple black t-shirt. "Elias," I called out, my voice shaking but firm. He stopped and turned slowly. His face was a mask of calm, but his eyes held a storm of secrets. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice raw. "What are you? I see you everywhere. The dogs, they go crazy when you're near. And just now, I saw the steam, the scars. None of this is normal." I stood there, bracing myself for a denial, for him to call me crazy. But he just looked at me, a deep ancient sadness in his gaze. He took a step closer, and I had to fight the urge to step back. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the ground. It wasn't a threat or a dismissal. It was a statement of fact, heavy with a weariness that seemed older than the trees around us. And with that, he turned and disappeared into the woods, leaving me alone with more questions than answers. That night, sleep offered no escape. My dreams were a chaotic tempest of images and sounds, all centered around him. I dreamt of running through a forest under the light of a full moon, its surface stained a deep, ominous red. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. And then I heard a sound that shook me to my very core. A howl. Not the sound of a lone wolf, but a chorus of them, a symphony of longing, rage, and untamed wildness. The sound echoed in my dream self, and in the dream, I saw Elias's eyes, glowing with a golden light under that blood moon. The howls grew louder, closer, until I woke up with a gasp, my own scream caught in my throat, the sound of the wild still ringing in my ears. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it wasn't just a dream. It was a memory, or a warning, and it was all tied to him. Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The full moon hangs in the sky like a silver coin, casting an ethereal glow over the charity gala. It's a night of champagne, polite laughter, and secrets hidden beneath designer clothes. The air is thick with the scent of expensive perfume and night-blooming jasmine from the sprawling estate gardens. I'm here, of course, mingling, but my eyes keep drifting, searching for him. Elias. He's a magnetic force, a quiet storm in a room full of noise. He's been avoiding me all evening, his gaze a fleeting touch that promises everything and nothing. It's driving me mad. My curiosity, a relentless beast in its own right, finally wins. He slips away from the crowd, a shadow melting into the deeper shadows of the garden. I give it a moment, then follow, my heels sinking slightly into the manicured lawn. The music from the party fades, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. The path is lit by ornate, low-standing lanterns, guiding me deeper into a maze of rose bushes and marble statues. There, in a small clearing centered around a stone fountain, I find him. But this isn't the composed, enigmatic Elias from the party. His back is to me, his broad shoulders tense, his hands braced against the cool stone of the fountain's edge. A low, guttural sound escapes his lips, a sound of pure, primal struggle. He's trembling, his entire body racked with violent shivers as if fighting a fever. I take a hesitant step forward, my voice a soft whisper. Elias, are you okay? He whips around and my heart seizes in my chest. This is not the face I know. His eyes, they're glowing, not like a reflection, but with an internal amber light that seems to burn from within. His jaw is clenched so tight I can hear his teeth grinding. His voice, when he speaks, is a rough, strained rasp, an animal's growl, barely contained. You shouldn't have followed me. Fear should be my first instinct. I should run, scream, get back to the safety of the lights and the crowd. But I'm frozen, utterly captivated by the impossible sight before me. I watch, mesmerized and terrified, as his fingernails thicken, darken, and elongate into sharp, menacing claws that tear through the skin of his fingertips. He groans, a sound of pure agony, and doubles over, fighting whatever is trying to take him over. Then, with a roar of sheer willpower that echoes through the quiet garden, he forces it back. The glow in his eyes fades, the claws retract, the tremors subside. He's left panting, sweat beading on his forehead, looking at me with an expression of such raw anguish it steals the breath from my lungs. He looks broken. I didn't choose this, he says, his voice ragged with exhaustion and despair. He takes a shaky step towards me, his eyes pleading, searching mine for understanding, for anything but the horror he must expect to see. I fight it, every day, but I can't. I can't stay away from you, Maya. His confession hangs in the air between us, more shocking than the monstrous transformation I just witnessed. It's not a threat, it's a surrender. And in that moment, under the watchful eye of the full moon, everything changes. Life in the city started to feel different. It was subtle at first, like a radio station just slightly off tune. The screech of subway brakes wasn't just loud anymore. It was a physical jab in my ears. The smell of roasted nuts from a street vendor wasn't just tempting. It was an intricate map of cinnamon, sugar, and smoke that I could almost taste on the air. My world was turning up its volume, and I didn't know how to turn it down. My sleep became a strange, new territory. I'd fall asleep in my cramped apartment and wake up sprinting through a dense, moonlit forest, the damp earth cool beneath my bare feet. The dreams were so real, so visceral, that I'd jolt awake with my heart hammering against my ribs, the scent of pine and wild earth still clinging to me. I started keeping a dream journal, but the entries were more like frantic dispatches from another reality than simple dream recollections. Running with a shadow, I wrote one night, "The wind speaks my name," another. And then there were the whispers. As soon as the moon climbed into the night sky, a sliver of silver or a full glowing orb, they would start. Faint murmurs that seemed to ride on the breeze, just at the edge of my hearing. They weren't scary, not exactly. They felt ancient, familiar. I'd stand by my window, straining to understand, but the words were always just out of reach, like a half-remembered song. I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe the stress of my new job was finally getting to me. The one person I thought I could talk to about anything, Elias, was suddenly a ghost. After that night in the forest, he became distant, almost cold. He'd find excuses to miss our coffee dates. His texts became short and sporadic. When I did manage to catch him, his eyes, those intense, silver eyes, wouldn't quite meet mine. He looked haunted, like he was carrying a heavy secret. His avoidance hurt more than the screeching subways or the confusing whispers. It felt like a betrayal from the one person who made this overwhelming city feel like home. I tried to corner him one afternoon outside the library. "Elias, what's going on? Did I do something?" He flinched, running a hand through his dark hair. "It's not you, Maya. It's complicated. I just need some space." He looked over my shoulder at the setting sun, a strange urgency in his gaze. "I have to go." And just like that, he was gone, melting into the evening crowd, leaving me alone with a growing pit of confusion and 1,000 unanswered questions. His fear was palpable, but I couldn't understand what he was so afraid of. Was he afraid of me? The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I was trying to cook, a rare attempt at domesticity in my tiny kitchen. The knife was new, sharper than I was used to. My mind was a million miles away, replaying my last stilted conversation with Elias, when the blade slipped. A sharp, stinging pain shot up my arm. I hissed, dropping the knife with a clatter. It was a deep cut, beading with blood that dripped onto the linoleum floor. I grabbed a kitchen towel, pressing it hard against my palm, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Panic started to set in, and then he was there. The door to my apartment flew open with a bang that made me jump. It was Elias. His hair was disheveled. His chest was heaving like he'd run all the way here. His eyes were wild, wide with a frantic terror that made my breath catch. "Maya," he breathed out, his voice rough. He didn't ask what happened. He just saw the blood-soaked towel and crossed the small room into long strides. He reached for my hand, his fingers hesitating for just a second before closing around my wrist. The moment his skin touched mine, the world went silent. The city noise vanished. The whispers in my head stopped. There was only the frantic beat of my own heart and the warmth of his touch. He gently pulled the towel away from my palm. The cut was still bleeding freely. His gaze was locked on it, his jaw tight. And then something impossible happened. A faint silver light began to glow from my wound. It wasn't a reflection. It was a soft, ethereal luminescence pulsing from within my skin. I stared at it, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. Elias's breath hitched. Slowly, almost in sync, a corresponding silver light began to pulse from his own skin, right where his fingers were wrapped around my wrist. The two lights seemed to reach for each other, weaving together in a shimmering, energetic dance. The pain in my hand vanished, replaced by an electrifying warmth that spread up my arm and through my entire body. It felt like coming home to a place I never knew. I'd left. We both froze, staring at the impossible, beautiful light connecting us. Time seemed to stretch and warp. I looked up from our glowing hands to his face. The fear was gone from his eyes, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated awe. And something else, something that looked like destiny. He finally spoke, his voice a low, reverent whisper that vibrated through me. "The mate bond," he said, as if the words were being pulled from his very soul. "It's awakened." My mind was reeling. Mate bond? Like in the fantasy novels I used to read? It didn't make sense. None of this made sense. Before I could even form a question, he looked at me, his silver eyes holding a depth of emotion that stole my breath away. "I'm an alpha, Maya." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning I was only just beginning to grasp. "And you are my destined mate." He took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving mine. "You're a Luna wolf. The legends said your line was extinct, that you were all gone." The silver light pulls between us, a silent, undeniable truth. My life as a normal girl in the city was over, and a new, terrifying, and incredible chapter had just been violently torn open. Thank you so much for watching. If you're as hooked as I am, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the next video. You think you know how this story goes, don't you? A handsome, brooding alpha finds a human girl. They fall in love, the end. Well, get ready to throw that fairy tale out the window, because what's coming next is a twist you won't see coming. Just as Maya is starting to feel a flicker of belonging, a sense of home in Elias's strong arms, a new figure steps out of the shadows. Her name is Serafini, and she's not just any wolf. She's an alpha female, radiating a dangerous, possessive energy that makes the air crackle. She looks at Maya not with curiosity, but with pure, unadulterated venom. And her connection to Elias? She's his ex-lover, the one he left behind, the one who never forgave him. Serafini circles Maya like a predator, her eyes flashing. What is this thing doing here? She sneers, her voice dripping with disdain. This is sacred ground. Her kind is forbidden. Elias steps in front of Maya, a low growl rumbling in his chest. She is with me, Serafini. She is under my protection. But Serafini just laughs, a cold, chilling sound that echoes through the trees. Your protection? You foolish boy. You have no idea what you've brought into our midst, do you? You think she's just some fragile human you can play hero for? She turns her burning gaze back to Maya, who stands frozen, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Look at her, Serafini says, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that carries to every wolf in the clearing. Look closer. Can't you smell it? Underneath the human scent, there's something else, something ancient, something powerful. The other wolves begin to murmur, their expressions shifting from hostility to confusion and then to awe. Elias looks from Serafini to Maya, his own senses on high alert. He had noticed something different about Maya's scent, a unique quality he couldn't place, but he dismissed it as part of her human allure. Now, doubt creeps in. Serafini savors the moment, letting the tension build until it's almost unbearable. Then, she delivers the killing blow. She's not human, she declares, her voice ringing with triumph. Not entirely. She is half lichen. A collective gasp ripples through the pack. Half lichen. It was a myth, a legend whispered around campfires. A creature of two worlds, possessing the strengths of both and the weaknesses of neither. But Serafini isn't finished. The real bombshell is yet to come. And not just any half lichen. She continues, pointing a trembling finger at Maya. She is a descendant of the first moon-blooded line, the original bloodline, the one we thought was lost to the ages, hidden for centuries. The clearing erupts into chaos. The moon-blooded line. It was the stuff of prophecy. The legend said a descendant would one day return, a being with the power to either unite all packs or plunge them into an eternal war. They were said to be blessed by the moon goddess herself, possessing abilities that no ordinary werewolf could even dream of. Suddenly, Maya isn't just an outsider anymore. She's a symbol. To some, she's a deity, a savior walking among them. You can see it in their eyes, a fanatical, desperate worship. They start to bow their heads, whispering her name like a prayer. They see her as the answer to their hopes, the fulfillment of a prophecy that promised a golden age. They want to protect her, to elevate her, to place her on a pedestal. But to others, she is an abomination, a threat to the natural order. Serafini's faction, those who value purity and tradition above all else, see Maya as a perversion, a half-breed who could corrupt their bloodlines and destroy everything they hold dear. They don't see a savior. They see a demon in disguise, and they won't stop until she is eradicated. Elias is caught in the middle, his world turned upside down. The woman he's falling for, the one he swore to protect, is now the most wanted person or creature in the entire lichen world. He has to choose a side. But how can he? Protecting her now means declaring war on his own kind, maybe even on members of his own pack. The weight of prophecy, politics, and power suddenly rests on his shoulders. And Maya? She's no longer just a girl caught between two worlds. She is the spark that's about to ignite a firestorm. The two most powerful packs, once rivals, now have a common interest, her. One pack wants to crown her a queen. The other wants to see her burn. She is a prize and a target, a goddess and a monster. Her very existence is a declaration of war. This moment right here, this is why Gracie Werewolf Story Bank exists. We don't do simple love stories. We do epic sagas. We dive into stories that make you feel everything: the shock, the fear, the awe, the impossible choices. Stories that grab you by the heart and don't let go. If you've been watching till now, you're not just an audience, you're family. You're part of this journey with Maya and Elias. I want to know where our family is from. Drop your country in the comments below so we can see how far this story has traveled. And if you haven't already, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. Creating these deep, immersive stories takes a lot of time and passion. If you're enjoying this and want to help me tell even more tales like this one, consider buying me a coffee using the link in the description. Every little bit of support helps keep this channel going and allows me to dedicate more time to bringing these worlds to life for you. Your support means everything. Thank you for being here. You're part of something truly special now. Let's get back to the storm. The revelation hangs in the air, thick and suffocating. Maya looks down at her hands, seeing them in a new light. All her life, she felt like an outsider, different from everyone else. Now she knows why. This hidden part of her, this secret heritage, explains everything. But it doesn't bring her peace. It brings her terror. The looks of adoration are just as frightening as the looks of hatred. Both want to possess her, to use her for their own ends. Elias moves to her side, his body a solid, reassuring presence in the swirling chaos. He doesn't look at her with worship or disgust. He just looks at her, at Maya, the woman he's come to care for. I don't care what you are, he says, his voice low and for her ears only. I will not let them have you. But his words are almost drowned out by the rising tide of voices. The pack is dividing right before their eyes. Old allegiances are fracturing. Friends are turning on friends. Serafini stands back, a cruel smile playing on her lips. This is exactly what she wanted. She couldn't have Elias, so she decided to burn his world to the ground. And Maya is the match she used to light the fire. The stage is set for a war, not just between packs, but within them. And Maya, the girl who just wanted to find where she belonged, is standing right at the epicenter of it all. Her journey is no longer about survival. It's about destiny. And her destiny, it seems, is written in blood and betrayal. The night of the full moon arrived. A silver disc hung in a sky of bruised velvet. The air, usually so calm in our little corner of the world, was electric, crackling with an unseen tension. We all felt it. The pack was on edge, fur bristling, senses on high alert. We knew Serafini was coming. It wasn't a question of if, but when. She'd been a shadow at the edge of our vision for weeks, a whispered threat that had now grown into a roar. Elias stood like a statue carved from mountain stone, his gaze fixed on the forest's dark edge. I was by his side, my hand trembling slightly, but I kept it locked with his. His strength was my anchor. He was the alpha, the protector. But tonight, I could feel the tremor in his own soul. He wasn't just worried about the pack. He was worried about me. He had been ever since he learned what I was, what my blood could do. Then she appeared. Serafini didn't emerge from the trees with a snarl. She glided out, a specter of moonlight and malice. Her eyes, chips of ice, were locked on Elias. But it wasn't a challenge for leadership she was after. It was something far more twisted. Alpha, she purred, her voice a venomous whisper that carried on the wind. You've been keeping a secret. A very potent secret. Her attack was a blur of silver fur and flashing claws. She wasn't aiming for Elias, not directly. She was aiming for me. The pack surged forward, a wave of growls and snapping teeth, but Serafini was unnaturally fast, a phantom weaving through the chaos. Elias moved like lightning, intercepting her, but she was slippery, cunning. One of her claws, sharp as a shard of obsidian, sliced across my arm. It wasn't a deep cut, but it didn't need to be. A single drop of my blood welled up, shimmering ruby red in the moonlight. It fell, landing on the forest floor, and the scent exploded into the air. It was like a lit match to gasoline. A guttural sound ripped from Elias's throat, a noise that was neither human nor wolf. It was pure agony. He stumbled back, clutching his head as his body began to contort. The transformation was happening, but it was wrong, violent. It wasn't the controlled, powerful shift of an alpha. It was a chaotic, brutal unraveling. His bones cracked and reset with sickening snaps, his muscles spasming under his skin. And his eyes, his beautiful, gentle eyes, they changed. They didn't just shift to the familiar gold of his wolf. They burned. They blazed with a terrifying ancient fire, an inferno of raw, untamed power. This wasn't just the wolf. This was something older, something darker that my blood had awakened. He threw his head back and howled, a sound that shattered the stillness of the night, a symphony of rage and pain that made the very trees tremble. He was no longer just Elias. He was a maelstrom of instinct and fury. The wolf, amplified by my bloodline, was at war with the man, and the man was losing. He looked at Serafini, and the pure, predatory intent in his gaze was terrifying. But then his burning eyes swept over the pack, over me, and I saw the conflict, the desperate struggle to hold on. He was fighting himself, fighting the primal urge that screamed at him to dominate, to destroy, to claim. The pack fell back, whimpering. They didn't see their alpha anymore. They saw a force of nature they couldn't possibly contain. Serafini watched with a triumphant, cruel smile, her plan having succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. She had unleashed a monster she believed would tear us all apart, starting with me. But I couldn't run. My feet were rooted to the spot, my heart hammering against my ribs, not just with fear, but with a fierce, defiant love. This was Elias, my Elias. Buried under all that rage and instinct, he was still in there. I had to reach him. Ignoring the pack's panicked warnings, I took a step forward, then another. The monstrous form of the wolf tensed, a low growl rumbling in its chest, a clear warning. The golden inferno of his eyes locked onto me. I could feel the sheer force of his will, the battle raging within him. He was choosing. Every agonizing second that stretched between us was a choice. Love or instinct, the man or the beast. I stopped just a few feet away from him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. I raised my hands slowly, showing I meant no harm. I looked directly into those terrifying, beautiful eyes. And with all the love and certainty in my soul, I whispered, my voice barely carrying over the pounding of my own heart, "I'm not afraid of what you are." For a single, breathtaking moment, the fire in his eyes flickered. I saw a flash of recognition of Elias, a flicker of the man I loved, but it was immediately swallowed by the storm. He roared. It wasn't a sound of anger or aggression. It was a deafening, heart-wrenching cry of loss, of surrender, of a soul being torn in two. The sound wave hit me like a physical blow, and as it washed over me, everything, the forest, the moonlight, the terrified faces of the pack faded into an overwhelming, blinding white. When I woke, the world was silent. The moon was gone, replaced by the soft gray light of pre-dawn. The air was cold. The pack was huddled together, their expressions a mixture of grief and shock. Serafini was nowhere to be seen. And Elias was gone. My heart shattered. I scrambled to the spot where he had stood, my hands searching the dirt as if I could will him back into existence. And then my fingers brushed against a piece of paper, folded neatly and weighted down by a small, smooth stone. His scent clung to it, faint and fading. With trembling hands, I unfolded it. His handwriting was shaky, barely legible. "The moon is calling me. Don't follow. I'll come back when it's safe. If I still remember you." And that's where this chapter ends. But the pack, our pack, doesn't end here. Thank you for being part of this journey, for being one of the 1,000 souls who have gathered with us. If this story has found a place in your heart, if you felt the highs and the lows right here in your chest, please consider supporting Gracie Werewolf Story Bank with the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description below. Your support helps us keep these stories alive. And please, drop your country in the comments. Let's see how far our pack reaches. Let's build something magical together, because this isn't just fiction anymore. This is us. This is family. Thank you for listening.